Hey guys, Mike Bland from SIS Global Investigations. Good morning once again. Had a subscriber named Kenny Mack. Thank you, Kenny, for your support, following, subscribing, commenting, engaging with me. Kenny had a question that's a brilliant question that is literally the topic here. So, would a family like the victim's family in this Idaho murder case or any investigation benefit from hiring a private investigator? And if so, how and why, and how does that fit in, and how does that fit in with law enforcement? So this is something a lot of people do not know. So this is a great question, Kenny. Thanks again. So the answer to that is law enforcement, they're over here. They're working under the color of law. They have subpoena, search warrant powers. They have to go by many rules and restrictions and department policies and all kinds of other things because they are a public entity, like I used to formerly be a police officer. So as a private investigator, the gist of that is in many states you do not have to be licensed. In some states you do. Hopefully you are hiring one that is experienced and is very and can back that up with a long career like myself. But the way that differs in hiring an investigator, your own personal investigator, some call it private investigator, private detective, whatever, is that to handle personal and discrete matters or something like this that maybe law enforcement is currently working on. So where the dynamics falls in together there is you are conducting as a private investigator your own independent private investigation. You are not answering to law enforcement. A lot of people get confused on this. You're not answering to an attorney. If the family has an attorney, he does his attorney stuff. Can you work in conjunction with him? Or can you even pass things on to law enforcement? Yes, everything can be done. However, typically, again, and just like the FBI does, where they don't discuss anything, they don't even acknowledge there's an investigation going on. Basically, short scenario is that's the best way to do business as far as investigations. You don't ever discuss an ongoing investigation. You do not accuse people of being a suspect. You do not talk about evidence. You do not talk about anything other than there's progress being made. There's not progress being made. We're getting closer. You've got to, unfortunately, be very vague. The families, the public gets very frustrated. That's where the people start doing the amateur sleuthing and everything else. But, a private investigator is going to answer directly to the families, whereas, so if an investigator finds out something, but even then it's tricky because you might find out something you could release to the families that the law enforcement's not wanting to. However, if you're a good and you're a professional private investigator, you're not going to do that either because you're going to jeopardize the investigation. You simply don't ever know who you're dealing with. You don't know if people are being honest. It's too complicated, and there's just too many dynamics. So you do not discuss. You hold all the cards. You don't show them to anyone. And it all depends. Like I said, it's very complex. But the short of it is, you're independent investigator. So now, can you go as a private investigator? Can you go busting in on the crime scene and taking photos and doing these things? Most likely, the answer is going to be definitively across the board. Absolutely not. They have that secured with either a patrolman, a detective, federal law enforcement, depending on the gravity of the scene. Can you photograph it from a distance? Sure. Can you obtain anything that's been used on the news or social media and analyze all these things? Sure. Again, and now because of the amateur sleuthing involved in social media, determining what of that stuff is fact or fiction is now a problem. But can you can obtain anything that you can obtain. Anything that's been shared publicly, anything you can see from driving by that address from the public. I mean, hey, if you want to ask the law enforcement if they'll let you come in because you're working on the case and to do photographs after the fact or even look for evidence, I mean, you can ask them, but they're not going to let you. And I've learned as a private investigator, unfortunately, I wouldn't really call it a rivalry. I think there is a big disconnect with law enforcement and private investigations, meaning because I was an officer once and I was in that position, we don't really have any clue as a cop what private detectives even do. First off, they really don't. The law enforcement, you got to remember, they're following orders, they're doing what they're told. It's an entirely different mentality. They're answering to someone. They're answering to a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, a police chief, and a mayor, or a deputy chief, or whatever, and a city councilman. So it's all about following orders. As a private investigator, you work in the gray areas. After all, that's what you're doing. So you're not really answering to anyone. You have to stay within the ethical, guidelines, hopefully having good morals, and also upholding the tradition of private investigations, the rich tradition, and hopefully following state, city, and local federal laws, whatever, wherever you're at, city, state, and country you're in, and doing your due diligence on the investigation, using fair business practices, all that. But yeah, so the answer is, so again, like a private investigator, you're not law enforcement, you're not working under the color of law, so you are not required to do things like get subpoenas, get search warrants, get permission to talk to people. You can do the investigations. If you want to give updates to the clients, you can, but unfortunately, really, the more time goes on, the more you learn, and anyone that's a professional investigator will tell you, it's behoove you not to share details. Because what happens is if you talk to a family member and one of them is directly involved in the crime, or they know someone that is directly involved in the crime, and now they're feeding all this back to this person and warning them, and they're destroying evidence, they're destroying video, they're threatening witnesses to not talk. The killer is now coming directly after you because you left your business card all over the place. When you talk to witnesses, there are so many things that go into this. But yes, anytime you hire a private investigator to work directly for you, also where that benefits is if you think law enforcement is dropping the ball or doesn't know what they're looking for, doesn't know what they're doing, does not have a work ethic, is lying to you, is covering something up, a private investigator can absolutely shed some light on what's really going on and put an entirely different spin on these things and uncover this. And especially, again, a guy like myself having a law enforcement background, I understand how law enforcement is supposed to work and how the system is supposed to work. And also when things are being covered up or not sounding right, or they're just not playing ball the way they're supposed to, those are red flags. You then have something else to focus on and investigate and uncover this. So subscriber Kenny Mack, thank you again, and please share this video, my friend. God bless.